Hello, everyone. I am DJ Leandro. Welcome back to the DJ Leandro Music channel. And today we're going to be diving into a classic and powerful effect that is known as distortion. So let's break it down. Okay, so what exactly is distortion? I'm pretty sure a lot of you out there, when we used to refer to distortion, it usually used to be when we'd go to a sound system and the speakers were overpowered or underpowered, or listening on your radio and you would turn the volume up really high and you get that really crunchy, like distorted sound. Well, that is actually what it is. And this is what distortion does within our production, is that we actually want to replicate that sound. So at its core, distortion is what happens when an audio signal is pushed beyond its limits, clipping the waveform and creating harmonic content that wasn't there before. This can add warmth, grit, aggression, and character depending on how it's used and how we want to use it. Okay, so there are a few types of distortion. The first type of distortion that we get is called overdrive. Think of it as this is a mild, warm distortion, a lot like a vintage tube amp that's just being pushed just a little bit. Our second main type of distortion is classic distortion. This is more intense, it's got a very crunchy sound, and it's quite common in rock and metal guitars. And then our third type of distortion is fuzz. This is very saturated, almost a broken sound that's used a lot in psychedelic and lo-fi music. And then the fourth type, main type of distortion that we get is saturation. This is a subtle form of distortion that's often used in mixing to add warmth, harmonics, and character. Now, let's quickly go over some of the key controls that you'll find in Cubase's built-in distortion plugins. Okay, so I've loaded up all the distortion plugins the main plugins that is within Cubase 14 Pro. The first one that we get is called Magneto 2, which is this here. And these are the controls. So let's go through each of them. So first one you're going to find is going to be called drive or amount, which is usually this saturation button over here. This is where the magic starts. Increasing this pushes the signal harder, adding saturation or aggressive clipping depending on the plugin. So let's have a listen now. This is the dry signal. I've got a nice synth loop, so let's have a listen. Okay, I'm going to turn on the saturation and bring it up. Let's bypass. There we go. So as you can hear, it's adding that specific harmonic of distortion, which is mainly saturation. Okay, then the second control that we usually get is called character or type. This can be found in the second Cubase distortion plugin known as Quadra Fuzz, which you can find here. Some of these plugins let you choose different distortion styles like tape, tube, transistor, or fuzz. As you can see, which are here, depending on which band you want, we can find the options here: tube, tape, distortion, amp, and so on. Then the third usual control that we get is tone, either low and high EQ. Cubase plugins often include tone shaping controls. For example, in Quadra Fuzz, as you can see here, you can adjust each frequency band individually, which is really great for precise control, which you can find obviously here depending on each one, and we can drive each one. We can also increase the input and output. As you can see, the multiband is changing for each of these. Then the next control we usually get is called mix, which is actually mixing between the dry and the wet signal. This is used to blend the original clean signal with the distorted one, which is perfect for, let's say, like a parallel distortion in this case, where you want to impact without losing clarity. This we can find in the third Cubase distortion plugin, amply named Distortion. So as you can see here, we have our synth again. I'm going to play it for you now. This is bypassed. I'm going to turn this on. And the mix is usually how we want to, between our, let's say, our dry signal, which is 0%, and then we're going to all the way to the right, which is our wet. There we go. So as you can hear, that's it. And then the next control level control that we have is called output. Now, the output of the level, after driving the signal, uses this to bring the final volume back under control so you're not clipping your overall mix. So in other words, like now, as we heard, if I bring the boost up, you can hear it's now starting to drive the signal. We can drop the output to give it more tamed so it doesn't overdrive. Just remember that many of these plugins also let you automate parameters or link them to quick controls for real-time changes, as well as for some cool sound design techniques. Okay, so now that we've gone through each of these, the main distortion plugins, you will also find another two extra ones. The fourth one that you'll find here is called Tone Booster, which you can find here very, very simple. So let's have a listen again to our synth. Now I'll turn it on. This is just adding a little bit more subtle, more harmonic form of distortion. And then lastly, you'll find in your channel strip, you'll find also some saturation controls here. You'll find magneto, which is here. And then if you click the down arrow, you'll find then another two types of saturation. We've got tape, and then we've got tube saturation, which you could use, and you'll just bypass. If you don't want them, you just click there, and it'll just be bypassed. And to activate it, you'll just click there. Okay, so now let's listen to see how distortion can change a sound using Cubase's stock plugins. Now we've heard it in a synth, so now let's listen in for our drum loop. So let's have a listen to the drum loop as a dry signal. Let's increase the volume. Okay, now I'm going to add some classic distortion. Okay, so that is it with distortion. Let's deactivate it. Okay, that's one example that we can use. Now let's see what distortion is going to do on, let's say, a vocal. So let's listen to the vocal as a dry signal.
I saw your face right in front of me. You wore me a smile that I couldn't keep.
Okay, now in Quadrofuzz, as you can see, it's sort of a multi-band distortion plugin. So now we're going to start messing with each of these to get more of a feel and more harmonics into our vocal.
I saw your face right in front of me. You wore me a smile that I couldn't keep. All a dream. I saw your face right in front of me. You wore me a smile that I couldn't keep.
Okay, let's bypass it now.
All a dream. I saw your face right in front of me. You wore me a smile that I couldn't keep.
See, as you can hear, it adds a lot of character, a lot of saturation within your vocal. You can even add more subtly. This was just an extreme example to show you what kind of harmonics we can bring to any sound, either drums, a synth, or a vocal in this case. Okay, so here's a cool sound design trick that we can use. We can try using distortion in combination with automation to create movement and excitement. For example, we can take a simple bass or lead and automate the drive or mix knob of the plugin. This is also really great to automate rises. So if you want to make like a nice rising effect, we can actually use this, which is great for builds and transitions or breakdowns. So let's use one of these as an example now. Let's have a listen to it as a dry signal. Okay. Now what we can do is we can automate this. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in, let's say, our classic distortion. Okay. Now what we can do is we can automate the mix. So let's say we're going to make the tone a little bit like that. Output will drop a little bit, bring the feedback up. We'll bring the boosting a little bit. Okay, now what we can do is we're going to automate this now. We're going to automate the mix. So let's have a listen to this now, why we automate it. Okay, so now let's have a listen to this automated signal. Okay, now let's turn off our automation and let's have a listen to what it sounds like now. Yeah, and now you can hear the difference. It's actually adding a little bit more character to that riser. So yeah, that is distortion. Use it as much as you can if you want. Remember, less is more. Be very careful. You don't want to be clipping any certain sounds or adding any unnecessary harmonics. That's the only thing with distortion too that you got to be careful of. Is that yes, it's a great tool, but if you overdo it, it can actually destroy your mixes. So yeah, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you at the next one.